Welcome back. There are some chilling similarities between the Darfur and Iraq stories. Huge numbers of civilian casualties, paramilitaries closely linked to government forces, victims targeted for ethnic reasons, and questions about the way both stories are being covered. One conflict is characterized as a civil war or cycles of insurgency. The other gets called a genocide. And why is it that Darfur gets so much attention in the Western media, yet so little in the Arab world where the story is actually taking place? The Listening Post's SALAH KHADR now on Darfur, the coverage and the relative silence.
200,000 dead, millions of refugees in need of help, a picture of hell on earth according to the UN. Sudan is 40% Arab, and Arabs are at the heart of this conflict. But for many in the Arab world, the humanitarian catastrophe that is Darfur just doesn't exist. The reason? The Arab media have largely ignored it.
Everybody in Darfur is a Muslim, whether you're a victim or perpetrator. Everybody is a Muslim. So why are Muslims killing Muslims?
The problem with Darfur when it comes to the Arab media is it doesn't fit the script. The script, of course, is Arabs victims. Other people are the aggressors, Israelis, Americans, even Iranians. But that's not the case in Darfur. In Darfur, Arabs are good guys and bad guys.
I think we are in a state of denial. The Arabs or Muslims cannot do this, it did not happen. But they can do this, and it did happen. And they have to reconcile themselves to the fact.
Arab media doesn't cover a lot of what's going on in Darfur crisis, but this doesn't mean that the Arab public opinion is not interested. A Zogby poll shows that there's a real eagerness among the Arab public opinion to learn more and to know more about what's happening in Darfur, while this is not reflected in the Arab media.
One could argue that geography plays a role, since this is Africa, not strictly the Middle East. But whilst this remains a non-event on the Arab media scene, European and North American media travel from greater distances to cover this story.
Beijing has blocked efforts to send UN peacekeepers there without Sudanese consent.
There has been a reluctance in the Arab media to go to Darfur and actually check things out for themselves. I see a lot more Western media coming in and actually going to Darfur and spending weeks in Darfur than I do Arab media. And that's where you see the difference, is that you will get a much more in-depth coverage and more interesting coverage if you actually go to Darfur. And that's where the Arab media, I think, has probably fallen down.
It's difficult to accept the implied rationale, the rationale implied by American media, which is that this is Arabs killing Africans, and Arabs kill because they don't know anything other than violence. That's what the audience is left to conclude. So that's, of course, not acceptable if you're part of the Arab media. You can immediately sense that you're being caricatured and demonized at the same time.
But could suspicion over the motivation and vigor of US media coverage account for this questionable media strategy?
How could this just be done by Arab militias without the support of the Sudanese government?
Most striking to me is that the media coverage has a single focus, and that's a focus on atrocities. There's no attempt to place them in context. There's no attempt to explain, to locate it historically, to show that there's any change happening.
It's almost like a defensive thing. If the Western media is attacking Khartoum in this unjustified way, we, the Arab media, maybe we ought to be defending it, because this is another friendly Arab or Islamic government which is subject to sort of onslaught by Westerners, and is part of the sort of Islamophobia, which is obviously a real issue for everybody.
I think it is about linking Darfur with the larger war on terror by portraying, framing the perpetrators of violence in Darfur as Arabs, the violence as Arab violence, the genocide as an Arab genocide. That's what it's about.
But with 22 Arab states, each with their own distinctive media output, it's not so much a question of an agenda, but which agenda.
Every Arab government has a different agenda from the other. Egypt is more interested in Darfur because Sudan is next door, and it doesn't want a spillover. Whereas, let's say, a country like the Emirates or Oman, they are not directly involved and they can't influence events. So you find that the coverage there is far more limited.
The government of Sudan is doing this media blackout and is blocking access to Darfur and to information about Darfur, either by not issuing visas or by sending guides with journalists on the ground or taking journalists to government-controlled areas and showing them that life in the refugee camp is very good, etc., because they know that if information comes out, there will be more pressure on the Sudanese government.
It's not easy to cover Darfur. It's not easy for Western journalists, and it's not easy for Arab journalists. I talked to an Al Jazeera correspondent who was based in Khartoum a while back, and he said to go and cover Darfur, he had to go from Khartoum to Nairobi to West Africa, up to Cameroon, across from Cameroon to Chad, and then in through the back door into the refugee camps. If you don't do that, you're on a guided tour, you might as well go to Disneyland.
The result of these restrictions? A move toward analysis and away from reporting.
What happened is in Arab media, as you have so much coverage of the political issues related to Darfur, like what is the UK, France, the US, the UN reaction to what's happening in Darfur? And what we really need actually is not the political coverage, is the coverage from the ground. What are the facts? What are the stories? What are the images of the refugees, the images of the people being killed? And these are the images we don't have, and these are the images we need. It's not about the political process.
With so many civil wars to cover and so much human suffering to report, be it in Iraq, Congo, Somalia, or Sudan, to name but a few, should the media be responsible for shaping the attitudes of their population rather than reflecting them? Or should they, as it would appear, respond to the agendas of government and highly organized pressure groups?
More Global Village voices now on how the Arab media report Darfur.
I think most of the Arabic media, especially the official ones in the country, I think they are following the government's lines, which is 100% support to the Sudanese government, blindly, without even looking at the way of solving the problems. And that actually alienates them from the Darfurian people and the Darfurian movement. And instead of playing a role of mediating to solve the problems, they actually become part of the problem because they are part of the government line.
Some of the coverage of Arab media of the Darfur crisis is good, but some of it is bad. What is disappointing for us is bad. We consider it bad because it follows the lines of the Western media, which is generally biased against the Sudanese government.
Finally, this could be a glimpse into the future, a band totally made up of robots. The lead guitarist is proficient enough, however, the keyboard player might lack the charisma to make it as a rock star. They're a New Zealand band called the TRONS. Their song is called Sister Robot. This look at their rehearsal is our internet video of the week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.